Okay, now I'm going to talk about something that's a little bit still on the fringe because it's been pushed on the fringe by the powers that be. But this is about something called the Anunnakis. And it's so far out there that I even hesitated bringing it up in my book for fear that it would discredit the other information. But I think it's time, because when it comes to credibility, there's far more credibility for this information than there is biblical history. Matter of fact, hardly anything in the Bible that was ever written has been validated by any historian at the time. As far as Egyptian history goes, there was never any slaves that were Israelites in Egypt, ever. They were so unimportant that they don't even mention them, as a matter of fact. So let's talk about the Anunnakis. And just take a deep breath and take this in. You have to, this is the trouble with beliefs. If you're predisposed to a limited belief in your past, it's going to be hard to let this information in. But in a brief synopsis, this is it. Zecharia Sitchin writes in the Earth Chronicles, it's several books that he wrote. He's a linguist and he did a lot of research on this. And since him, there's been several other scientists. But basically, about 100 years ago, they started finding fragments of clay tablets from the Sumerian culture, about 3000 BC. And on these clay tablets were stories and pictographs. And some of the stories, like the Epic of Creation, is almost verbatim the story of Genesis, Noah story, the story of the flood. And it predates all of this information by thousands of years, because they're talking about a planet, what astronomers today, even NASA, is calling Planet X, that they suspicion is out there and heading our way. And if you go to xfacts.com, there's a lot of information there. But apparently it has a 3,600-year orbit, and the people from that planet, they call them the Anunnakis. Anunnaki means those who came down from above, which is very similar to the word Nephilim in the Bible, those from above. So when you study these tablets, what they're saying is they came here many, many, many times in search of gold and resources, and found some of the sentient beings that live here and genetically altered them into what we are today, basically upgraded us. Now, I'm not going to go into this a lot, because if you read my book and if you just get out there and you Google Anunnaki, you'll see a lot of really good information, David Icke. But to tell you how incredibly credible this is, the Catholic Church has even released a statement saying that based on the best evidence, it appears like that we are genetically altered sentient beings from a higher race that has visited our planet, and that the story in Genesis is a metaphor for this happening. So for them to make that statement is pretty bold. And I say this not without references too. It's documented that they said this. There's even a person called Monsignor Balducci. He speaks out quite frequently on the fact that extraterrestrials probably are here and they're coming here. And we should be ready for them. The Catholic Church took the extraterrestrials off the demon list. Something's up. And I think this mixes in really well with my book, because if this is true, which based on the best evidence, it seems like this is more validated than any other information. This simply means this. All three world religions, the Judeo-Christian, Muslim religions, are based upon one premise, one basic premise, and that was that Moses came down from the mountain, and God spoke to him from a burning bush, and that is the first 5 books of the Bible, the Torah, the Tanakh. So if this other information is true, that means that that is not true. He didn't speak to God. The Israelites found these clay tablets like we did, deciphered them, and thought, well, yeah, this is a good story. And they just overlaid themselves into it, said that their God gave them this information when really it wasn't God at all. It was the Anunnakis. And they even have names like Enlil and Enki. So I suggest you really follow up on this information, because if this is true, it means that the very beginning of all three world religions, which over half the planet is organized around, is not true. So that would solve a lot of the conflict between religions. If we could just pull the pin out from all three of them and let them see that they've been following a false doctrine from the very beginning. It's a tough one. But I think it's one that we have to start entertaining the idea that it might be true.